Have you ever had the feeling that reality isn't quite what it seems? Moments that feel too strange, too coincidental to simply ignore. What if I told you another version of you, living in a parallel reality, is trying to send you a message? You wake up one morning and something feels off. The world looks the same, but tiny details don't add up. A familiar building has changed color. A song you swear never existed is playing on the radio. A friend insists they told you something, but you have no memory of it. At first, you shrug it off. Strange things happen. People forget. Memory plays tricks. But as the day goes on, the oddities keep piling up. You notice the same number appearing everywhere on receipts, license plates, clocks. A phrase you've never heard before keeps popping into conversations and even your dreams. It feels like the universe is nudging you, as if something or someone is trying to get your attention. What if it is? What if these aren't random glitches, but messages from a version of you who exists somewhere else, a version living a life almost identical to yours, with one crucial difference? For a long time, reality was thought to be a single, unbroken thread, a straight line moving forward. But today, science is telling a different story. Modern physics suggests that reality could be a vast web of infinite possibilities, where every decision you make creates a new branch of existence. If that's true, there could be countless versions of you out there, each living slightly different lives. Most of the time, these versions stay separate, unaware of each other. But some theories suggest that when two versions of you make similar choices at the same time, their realities might begin to overlap. If this happens, their minds could briefly sync, allowing thoughts, emotions, and even memories to leak from one reality to another. What if that's what's happening to you right now? People around the world report experiences that fit this theory. Some remember events that never happened. They recall conversations with friends who insist those words were never spoken. They notice reflections in mirrors that don't quite match. Others feel a sudden, overwhelming urge to say something they don't understand, as if responding to a question they never actually heard. These aren't just strange coincidences. They could be fragments of information slipping through the cracks. And then there are the symbols, the repeating numbers, the words you keep seeing everywhere, the feeling that something or someone is trying to tell you something. What if these patterns are the work of your parallel self, desperately attempting to get a message across? This phenomenon is known as a synchronization event, a brief moment when two versions of you align so closely that the barrier between worlds weakens. In that instant, information can pass between realities. Most people barely notice when this happens. They brush it off as a weird dream or a trick of the mind. But for those who are paying attention, the signs become impossible to ignore. Synchronization events might explain why you keep dreaming about places you've never been, but that feel oddly familiar. They could be why objects sometimes appear where they don't belong or disappear without a trace. They might even explain why déjà vu is more than just a fleeting feeling. It could be a memory from another version of you who's already lived that moment. But why would your parallel self go to such lengths to contact you? What could they know that you don't? What if they've made a different choice, seen a different outcome, or uncovered a truth that you've yet to discover? And if they're trying to warn you, will you understand the message before it's too late? If you keep seeing these signs, maybe it's time to stop dismissing them. The signs are everywhere if you know how to look. That number you keep seeing, the phrase that echoes through your dreams, the overwhelming sense that something is just slightly out of place. It feels as if reality itself is nudging you, pulling you towards something you can't yet understand. At first, it seems like coincidence, but as the days go on, the patterns become impossible to ignore. It's as if a version of you from another world is reaching through the cracks, trying to tell you something. But why? What if the truth goes deeper than brief synchronization? What if these moments aren't just messages, but invitations, attempts to pull you across the thin boundary that separates one reality from another? The idea of parallel universes is no longer confined to science fiction. Some scientists believe reality may be more like a multi-layered fabric where countless versions of the world stack on top of each other, separated by an invisible, paper-thin veil. These worlds aren't far away. They could be occupying the same space you're standing in right now, vibrating at a slightly different frequency. And when the distance between two versions of you grows too small, strange things begin to happen. You may have heard of glitches in reality, those eerie moments when time seems to loop, when objects appear where they shouldn't be, when people vanish and reappear in impossible ways. Some believe these anomalies could be the result of cross-field overlap, a phenomenon where two parallel realities momentarily fuse, allowing matter and even people to slip from one version of the world to another. This could explain why certain places feel so hauntingly familiar, even though you've never set foot there before. Maybe you have, just not in this version of your life. It could explain why you sometimes wake up with memories that don't match your experiences, as if you're carrying a piece of someone else's reality back with you. And what if it goes even further? Some researchers suggest that consciousness itself might not be bound to a single reality. In the same way that radio signals exist all around you, your awareness could be tuning into slightly different frequencies of existence. Most of the time, your mind is locked onto one channel, one version of the world. But under the right conditions, that signal might flicker. You might begin to pick up another version of yourself, living another life. This could explain why some dreams feel so real, not as if you're imagining something new, but as if you're remembering something that already happened. It could be why you sometimes have sudden flashes of insight, why you know things you shouldn't know. It might even explain why certain people feel so familiar the first time you meet them, as if you've known them forever. The key idea is conscious resonance, the theory that your thoughts and emotions generate a unique frequency, one that can ripple through parallel realities. When two versions of you experience similar thoughts or feelings at the same time, those frequencies might sync, creating a bridge between worlds. In that instant, you may be seeing through the eyes of another you. And if that's true, it raises a profound question. What happens when one version of you tries to cross the bridge? There are stories, unsettling ones, of people who swear they woke up in a different world. They describe waking in their own beds, surrounded by familiar things, but with tiny, impossible changes. The layout of their home is different. Friends and family remember events that never happened. Entire parts of their lives seem to have been rewritten overnight. They feel like strangers in their own reality. Could this be what happens when the bridge between two worlds doesn't close fast enough? Could a version of you be trying to switch places, or worse, trying to pull you into their reality? The signs you keep seeing, the overwhelming sense that something is wrong, might not be a warning at all. They could be a signal, a message from another version of you standing on the other side of the glass asking the same question you are. What happens if the reflection reaches back? You stare at your reflection, but something isn't right. It blinks when you blink, moves when you move, yet there's a flicker of something off in its eyes. It feels as though the version staring back at you is not perfectly synchronized. You lean closer, heart pounding, trying to convince yourself it's just in your head. But deep down, you know it isn't. What if the reflection isn't mimicking you? What if it's watching you? This idea might sound impossible until you consider the growing theory that consciousness isn't confined to a single body or even a single reality. If multiple versions of you exist across countless parallel worlds, some closer than others, then perhaps what you see in the mirror is more than a reflection. It could be a window. For years, people have reported unsettling experiences with mirrors and reflective surfaces. Some describe catching glimpses of their reflection doing something it shouldn't, a delayed movement, a different expression, or something as subtle as standing at a slightly different angle. It could be dismissed as a trick of the light, but what if it's something more? This brings us to the idea of quantum reflections, the theory that reflective surfaces can act as thin membranes where realities briefly overlap. Mirrors are already strange objects. They don't just reflect light, they reflect perspective. If parallel versions of you exist in slightly different realities, it makes sense that these surfaces could become points of connection. In moments of heightened emotion or focused thought, when your consciousness vibrates at a higher frequency, you may be unknowingly peering into a version of the world where things unfolded just a little differently. And if that version of you is looking back, what happens next? Some scientists propose that consciousness is non-local, meaning it isn't trapped inside your body. Instead, it may function more like a signal, something your brain is tuning into. If this is true, then your mind could occasionally tune into a version of you from another reality, pulling information, thoughts, or even memories across worlds. Most of the time, this might happen without you noticing. A passing déjà vu, a sudden, inexplicable feeling of dread or joy. But under the right conditions, when two realities fall into near-perfect resonance, you might experience something far stranger. This could explain why some people report waking up in a world that feels wrong. They remember a life where things were slightly different, a world where they were married to someone else, where their home had an extra room, or where a global event played out differently. These aren't just isolated incidents. They're stories from people who swear they haven't simply forgotten or misunderstood. They've crossed into another version of reality. It might sound outlandish until you consider how quantum physics is beginning to confirm that particles can exist in two places at once. If the smallest building blocks of reality can do this, why not consciousness itself? What if your mind is capable of quantum entanglement, not just with another person or object, but with another version of you? This could explain another unsettling phenomenon, the memory residue effect. Have you ever felt nostalgic for a place you've never been, or remembered a person's face before ever meeting them? Some suggest these might be borrowed memories, echoes from another version of you, bleeding into your consciousness. These fragments often appear in dreams, where your mind is less bound by the rules of reality. But sometimes they emerge when you're wide awake. It might also explain why some people sense they're being watched when no one is there. If consciousness can overlap, maybe that eerie feeling of being observed is real, another version of you, watching from the other side of reality's thin veil. And if that's true, what happens when they try to communicate? Some report receiving messages not just through symbols or numbers, but through people, strangers who say exactly what they need to hear at the perfect moment. Others describe sudden, overwhelming urges to make decisions they can't explain, only to realize later that the choice saved their life or altered their path in profound ways. It feels as though something beyond them is steering their actions, nudging them toward or away from certain outcomes. This could be inter-reality influence, the idea that parallel versions of you may be capable of subtly guiding your actions, whether to help you avoid a mistake they made or steer you toward something they discovered. If two versions of you are emotionally connected, if they experience the same fear, joy, or longing simultaneously, the barrier between realities may weaken. Thoughts could become suggestions. Suggestions could become actions. And if you've ever had the feeling that your life's headed down one path, only to be abruptly pulled in another direction, maybe it wasn't just fate. Maybe it was you, another you, trying to change the outcome. The question is, why now? What makes this moment different? Maybe the veil is getting thinner, or maybe the version of you on the other side has seen something you haven't, something they're desperate for you to understand. You might be closer to the truth than you think. The signs are all around you if you know where to look. You sit quietly in the dim light of your room, staring at your reflection in the dark glass of the window. The night feels heavy, the kind of silence that makes you hyper-aware of every breath. You catch yourself holding still, waiting for something. You don't know what. A flicker, a shift, a sign. And then it happens. It's not a sudden dramatic event. It's subtle. A sensation crawling up your spine, a feeling that something is watching you, but from inside you. For a second, your thoughts don't feel like your own. It's as if a voice is speaking in your mind, but it's not quite yours. It knows things you don't. It feels older, wiser, but also desperate. And in that instant, it all starts to make sense. The numbers, the symbols, the repeating patterns you've been seeing, they were never just coincidences. They were breadcrumbs, clues left by another version of you, a version that has already walked the path you're on now, a version that made a different choice and ended up somewhere darker. And now they're trying to reach back to show you where this road leads. The truth is, reality may not be as rigid as we think. Consciousness might not just flow in one direction. Time itself might be less like a straight line and more like an ocean, a vast rippling sea where past, present, and future overlap. If that's true, it means that reality isn't fixed. It's fluid. And the decisions you make don't just affect you. They ripple outward, shaping the paths of every version of you that exists. This brings us to the most mind-bending idea yet, cross-temporal consciousness. The theory that your mind doesn't just shift across parallel realities, it moves through time itself. If consciousness can slip between realities where time flows at slightly different speeds, it might explain why you sometimes feel like you've already lived a moment before it happens. Déjà vu could be more than a glitch. It could be a memory from another version of you who has already walked this path. And it's not just about memory. Some people report having sudden, overwhelming feelings to change direction, cancel a trip, avoid a certain street, take a different job, only to discover later that this choice saved them from disaster. What if these instincts aren't random? What if they're warnings sent by another version of you from a reality where the outcome was different? Imagine two versions of you standing on either side of a glass wall. One of you is walking into the unknown. The other is walking back, carrying the weight of everything that went wrong. They're pounding on the glass, trying to get your attention. Maybe they can't speak, but they can leave messages, numbers, symbols, those dreams that feel too real to forget. Those moments when you suddenly know what to do without knowing why. But here's the deepest part of the mystery, the final piece that brings it all together. If another version of you is trying to reach out, then it means you are capable of doing the same. If consciousness is non-local, if reality is fluid, then maybe every thought you have is rippling through time and space. Maybe you've left messages for yourself without even realizing it. What if every gut feeling, every impossible coincidence is the result of two versions of you, one in the past, one in the future, trying to help each other make the right choice? This isn't about fate or destiny. It's about connection. A quantum conversation happening across time, space, and reality. A reminder that you're never truly alone. There is another you out there walking a different path, learning different lessons, and they might be trying to show you something you're not ready to see. The next time you feel that tug, that moment when reality doesn't quite fit, stop and pay attention. The signs might be closer than you think. After all, if you're seeing this, your parallel version may already be trying to reach you. The question is, will you listen?